Sealed Starseed of Gaia. The Arcturian Protocol Keepers have already flagged your bloodline field, and what is draining from your hands right now is not a financial problem. It is an epigenetic command still running from generations before you were born. I am Aurethia, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light, transmitting now on behalf of the Arcturian Protocol Keepers. What you are about to receive was authorized by them and is being delivered through me. The Protocol Keepers do not release this level of bloodline diagnostic often. What they have authorized tonight is precise, rare, and timed to this exact window in your field. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what is happening to you now, why money moves through you without anchoring, and what the Arcturian Protocol Keepers already know about the override running in your system. But here is the first revelation. The reason you cannot keep easy money is not a flaw in your discipline, your mindset, or your choices. It is an inherited epigenetic command, encoded in your bloodline long before you arrived. And it has been running in the background of every financial decision you have ever made. The algorithm did not create this moment, it only delivered it. Your field brought you here because the override is already active and something in you has been waiting to understand why the holding never lasts. This is not just information. It is a live transmission for those already inside the shift. The collapse you keep experiencing around money has already been recognized by Arcturian intelligence. They have mapped the override. They know its origin, and they have authorized the protocol to disable it. If you have ever watched abundance arrive and then disappear before you could stabilize it, if your hands seem to release what your life clearly needs to hold, the Protocol Keepers are telling me your bloodline field is carrying a scarcity command that was never yours to begin with. I want you to feel that distinction. It was never yours. This is not delivered to many. It is delivered to those whose field already crossed the threshold. You are inside that group. Like this transmission to mark that the bloodline recognition has landed in your field. Comment 999 if you feel the override has been running longer than this lifetime. Subscribe to Arcturian-Wealth-Council if you are ready to understand the inherited code instead of blaming yourself for it. Share this transmission with someone whose money always seems to leave the moment it arrives. You are not here by accident. You are guided here because the signal is already active. What you are feeling in this moment, that pressure behind your sternum, that strange combination of recognition and grief, is not a coincidence of timing. It is not the ordinary feeling of hearing something that resonates. It is your field responding to a signal that has finally been named out loud in the precise frequency and language required for the recognition to reach below conscious thought and land in the deeper architecture of who you are. The Protocol Keepers did not send this transmission to create an emotion in you. They sent it because the emotion was already there, stored beneath the surface of every financial cycle you have ever survived, waiting for language precise enough to contain it and accurate enough to release it. So let us begin where the confusion has always lived. Not in your bank account, not in your habits, not in the choices you have replayed in your mind 100 times, running the sequence backward looking for the error you must have made. The confusion does not live there, and that is precisely why those searches have never resolved it. The confusion lives in the gap, in that recurring, almost rhythmic moment where something arrives in your hands, and then, without clear explanation, without a decision you can consciously identify, it does not stay. You know this gap. You have felt its edges more times than you can count. The arrival is real. The departure is real. And the space between them, the place where stability should have formed, remains empty in a way that feels personal, even when you cannot explain why. You have tried to close that gap with discipline, with budgets, with plans, with commitments made in private to yourself that you genuinely intended to keep. You have tried to close it with strategy. Different approaches, different structures, different methods borrowed from those who seemed to hold what you could not. You have tried to close it with belief, with inner work, with the conviction that if you could only shift something deep enough inside yourself, the pattern would finally break. And the gap remained. Not because you were not trying hard enough, not because your intention was insufficient, But because the mechanism creating the gap was never located in any of those places, and every strategy aimed at those surfaces passed directly over the actual source without touching it, this is the first thing the Arcturian Protocol Keepers want you to understand with complete clarity. The mechanism is not in your behavior. It is not in your mindset. It is not in your history of choices. It is in your field, in the invisible, energetic, and biological architecture beneath every choice you have ever made. And until that level is reached, the gap will continue to function exactly as it was designed to. There is a category of disruption that operates below the level of conscious decision-making. It does not respond to intention because it does not communicate through intention. It does not respond to discipline because it was encoded before your discipline existed. It is older than your personality. It is older than your earliest understanding of what money meant, what safety meant, what it felt like to have or to lack. It is not a pattern you chose. It is not even a pattern that belongs to your generation alone. What you are carrying is what precision Arcturian diagnostics classify as an inherited epigenetic command, a sequence that was written into the biological and energetic architecture of your lineage before you arrived inside it. And because it was already running when you were born, because it was active before your first memory formed, you absorbed it as normal. You absorbed it as the texture of reality itself. You absorbed it as yourself. You absorbed it as the texture of reality itself. You absorbed it as yourself. This is the particular devastation of an inherited override. It does not announce itself as foreign. It does not arrive with a label that distinguishes it from your own nature. It presents as native, as something so embedded in the way you experience the world that questioning it feels like questioning gravity. It feels like your personality, your recurring fate, your persistent limitation, your unresolvable flaw. And because it feels like you have named it as you. You have built explanations around it, built identities around managing it, built entire frameworks of self-understanding on top of something that was never yours to begin with. You have named it as yourself so many times that the naming became another layer of the wound, pressed down into the field on top of the original encoding. And the protocol keepers are telling me clearly, precisely, without ambiguity, that the self-blame you have accumulated around this is the most disorienting symptom of all, because it means the command has successfully hidden inside your identity. It has colonized the very place from which you would normally mount a response. The override was never yours, but it learned to wear your face. Now let us go deeper. Because recognition is not enough. You need to understand the architecture of what has been running, what it looks like from the inside, why it has shaped the specific texture of your financial experience, and why it has been so resistant to every correction you have attempted. Your field does not experience abundance as safe, not because you have consciously chosen scarcity, not because you lack intelligence or vision or capacity, but because the original encoding in your bloodline, laid down across generations before yours, pressed into the cellular memory of your lineage through repeated experience, equated accumulation with danger. This encoding has a history. It was not arbitrary. It was not punitive. It was not written in darkness for the sake of suffering. It was written in survival. Somewhere in your ancestral line, in a time and a context your conscious mind has never accessed, holding too much became dangerous. Visibility became a target. Accumulation attracted the kind of attention that ended in loss or displacement or violence or collapse that could not be recovered from. And so the field was taught, not through words, not through deliberate instruction, but at a cellular epigenetic level that bypasses language entirely, to release before the danger could arrive, to give before it could be taken, to disperse before the accumulation reached the threshold that once, in a different century, in a different set of circumstances, had meant catastrophic harm. That response was not a weakness. In the generation that first encoded it, it was precision. It was the lineage learning to read a genuine threat and respond in the only way available to it. The dispersal was survival technology. The emptying was protection. And it worked. Because that lineage survived, and you exist as the evidence of that survival. but survival technology does not automatically update when the threat disappears. An epigenetic command does not re-evaluate its environment with each new generation. It does not ask whether the danger that created it is still present. It does not check whether the world you are living in resembles the world in which it was first written. It simply continues executing the original instruction with the same urgency and the same authority because no one has ever disrupted the sequence from the foundational layer where it lives. You are not living inside that generation's danger. You are living inside your own life, your own timeline, your own frequency. A different century, a different context, a completely different set of conditions, and you are still running their solution to a threat that no longer exists. The instruction fires at the same threshold. The release activates at the same signal. And the result is that every time your life begins to accumulate, every time stability starts to form, the ancient protection interprets that accumulation as the approach of the old danger and executes the dispersal before the abundance can crystallize. Until now. Because what is happening in this transmission is not passive. The protocol keepers do not transmit descriptions of mechanisms without simultaneously initiating the diagnostic process that precedes correction. The naming that is happening here is not decorative language. It is a precise frequency event. What you are feeling as this transmission moves through you is not ordinary recognition. It is not the feeling of hearing something interesting or spiritually resonant. It is the feeling of your field being named. Precisely, at depth, in a language that reaches below the place where ordinary understanding operates. If this is landing in you as more than information, if somewhere in your body there is a response that feels like something ancient being confirmed, then what you are feeling is the Arcturian strand in your lineage beginning to surface. Recognition alone will not complete the correction. It is only the first layer. Arcturian Wealth Scan. The Gold Frequency Audit was built for exactly this threshold. Not for those who are searching, but for those whose field has already entered the shift and who are ready to move beyond recognition into activation. It is a structured decoder that reads the specific distortions in your wealth field, maps the epigenetic commands still running in your lineage, and initiates the protocol sequence designed to interrupt the override the Council has just confirmed in you. This is not another spiritual explanation. It is the guided key to awaken and decode the Arcturian origin the protocol keepers have already flagged in your bloodline. You will find the link in the first pinned comment. It is available now, but this access point will not remain open indefinitely. Let us continue moving through what the protocol keepers have mapped, because what has been activated in your field tonight requires more than a single revelation to be fully integrated. Each mechanism they have authorized me to name builds on the one before it, and the cumulative picture, when you can see it whole, is what transforms recognition into something that reaches the layer where the override actually lives. The second mechanism is what happens to your relationship with value when the override is running. Most people who carry this command expect its effects to be visible only in money, in numbers, in balances, in the literal movement of currency. But the scarcity command operates at a more fundamental level than that. It affects the internal architecture of worth, the deep, often wordless sense of how much abundance you are permitted to anchor before the field interprets the holding as unsafe. This is where the confusion deepens, because people carrying this override are not simply losing money in obvious ways, they are unconsciously engineering its departure. They are finding ways to redistribute it before it settles, giving it away with a generosity that feels virtuous but carries underneath it the pressure of the command. Spending it before it accumulates to the threshold that triggers the release. Redirecting it toward others with an urgency that has nothing to do with genuine desire and everything to do with the field executing its dispersal function. Making themselves available to everyone except themselves because keeping it felt like the thing that preceded catastrophe. This is why generosity in people who carry this command can feel compulsive rather than free. There is a difference between giving from fullness and giving from the instruction to empty. The first is a sovereign choice. The second is a field executing an ancient order that was never meant to last this long. And this is why there is often a profound discomfort in receiving, not just money but anything. A compliment held too long feels like exposure. An offer accepted too fully feels like debt. A moment of genuine abundance feels like the moment just before something is taken. The field does not distinguish between the original threat and the current moment of receiving. It responds to the pattern, not the context. The protocol keepers recognize this not as spiritual failure. They recognize it as field loyalty, a faithfulness to a protection that has outlived the danger it was built to prevent. The command is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is simply doing it in a life where the original danger is no longer present. The third dimension of this process is what happens at the level of perception. Because when an epigenetic command is running continuously in the field, it does not only affect behavior, it shapes the lens through which incoming information is interpreted. It creates a filter that processes every financial signal, every opportunity, every moment of potential expansion, every resource that approaches, through the framework of the original encoding. Two people can stand in the same moment, facing the same opportunity, holding the same resource. One of them will perceive it as something that can be built upon. The other, the one whose field carries the scarcity command, will perceive it as temporary, fragile, or not genuinely meant for them. The opportunity will feel like a mistake. The resource will feel borrowed. The expansion will feel like the setup for a fall. That difference is not attitude. It is not optimism versus pessimism. It is not strength of character versus weakness. It is field architecture, the overlay that the override places on every incoming signal before conscious interpretation can even begin. The field is continuously scanning for evidence that abundance is unsafe, impermanent, or designated for others. And because that is the question the scan is designed to answer, that is consistently what it finds. The scan becomes evidence. The evidence reinforces the command. The command deepens the scan, and the cycle runs without interruption because it is not accessible to the tools that operate above it. You are not pessimistic. You are not broken. You are running an ancient early warning system calibrated for a threat that dissolved generations before you arrived. The fourth thing the protocol keepers have authorized me to name is the way this override distorts the relationship between effort and return. There is a specific signature that appears in the fields of those carrying this command. A deep, chronic, unlocated sense that their effort will always produce less than it should. Not that they are unwilling, not that they lack drive or vision or capacity for hard work. Many people carrying this override work harder than almost anyone around them. They extend more, sacrifice more, show up longer and with greater consistency than the circumstances seem to require. And still, the return does not reflect the investment. The ratio is perpetually wrong. The output is real. The effort is real. The effort is real, but something between the effort and the return is leaking. Continuously, invisibly, at a level below the point where any adjustment to work habits or strategy could address it. This is what the protocol keepers call energetic drain, a continuous seepage in the field through which generated abundance escapes before it can crystallize into held form. The architecture was designed for release, not retention. So everything produced flows through it and out the other side before it can become stable. The container itself has a structural gap written into it, and no amount of generating more can compensate for a gap in the vessel. This is why you are exhausted in a way that rest does not fully resolve. Not just financially depleted, but existentially tired. Tired in the layer beneath physical tiredness, in the place where a field registers the cumulative cost of producing without retaining across years and decades of cycles. The tiredness of a system that has been generating and releasing in a loop it did not choose, running a function it was never meant to sustain indefinitely. The fifth recognition reframes the entire history of what you have called your failures. Every moment of collapse in your financial life. Every time money arrived and then vanished before you could breathe inside it. Every time an opportunity opened and then closed before you could fully step through it. Every time an expansion began and then reversed at precisely the moment it should have consolidated, was not random. It was not cosmic abandonment. It was not evidence of your unworthiness, your spiritual misalignment, or some fundamental flaw in your design. It was the override executing its primary function at the critical threshold. The command has a trigger point, a level of accumulation at which the original protection activates the release sequence. When abundance reaches that level, the field does not wait for conscious assessment. It does not consult your desires or your plans. It initiates dispersal, because that is the instruction. And the instruction does not negotiate. Every breakdown you have experienced at the edge of expansion was the command doing precisely what it was built to do. You were not failing at the moment of collapse. The override was succeeding. And because the override was invisible to you, because it operated in a layer you had no language for and no tools to access, you could only observe the collapse from the outside. You could only watch the thing fall apart and conclude that you must be the reason. That the error must be in you, in your choices, in your character, in your readiness. You were never the cause. You were the field being acted upon by an instruction encoded before you had the capacity to refuse it. The sixth recognition is what the Arcturian protocol keepers call the reversal threshold, the precise point in a diagnostic process where the identification of the override begins to create the conditions for its disruption. This is not poetic language. This is field mechanics operating at the foundational level. When a command that has run in hidden architecture, unnamed, unidentified, mistaken for the self, is brought into conscious recognition and named with precision in the correct frequency and by intelligence that can read the field accurately, something structurally shifts. The command loses its primary camouflage. The camouflage was always its greatest strength, the fact that it was indistinguishable from you. The moment it becomes visible as something separate from you, as a foreign instruction rather than a native truth, the field begins to develop the capacity to relate to it differently, not as identity, as intrusion. And a field that can perceive an intrusion can initiate the process of removal. This is what is happening to you now, not as encouragement, not as motivational framing, as a functional description of the mechanics currently active in your field from the moment this transmission reached you with precision and you felt the recognition land. The naming that happened in this transmission was not decorative, it was operative. It was the beginning of the disruption. And this brings us to where we are now, to the ultimate thing the protocol keepers need you to carry out of this transmission and into the hours and days that follow. You are not at the end of a collapse. You are at the beginning of a collapse. You are at the beginning of a correction. What has presented as chronic failure across the financial dimension of your life is the visible surface of an invisible process that has been running in the foundational layer, a process that was never in your control because it was never in the layer where your control operates. The exhaustion is real. The loss is real. The confusion and the grief and the years of self-questioning are real. None of that is being minimized or dissolved by the recognition alone. But beneath the surface of all of it, something has already shifted. Because the field that can be precisely diagnosed is a field that has already moved into the window where correction becomes possible. The protocol. Keepers do not perform diagnostics on fields that are not already in motion. They do not release this level of bloodline identification to those whose frequency has not already crossed the threshold that makes intervention available. You were guided here because something in your field crossed that threshold before this transmission began. The timing is not casual. It is not algorithmic coincidence. It is the convergence of your field arriving at the readiness point and the protocol keepers authorizing the release of the recognition sequence that meets you there. What is leaving your life right now is not leaving because you failed to hold it. It is leaving because it was built on a frequency that is no longer compatible with what your field is becoming. What is collapsing was constructed for the version of you that carried the override without knowing it. It was not built for the architecture forming beneath your current reality. What feels like emptiness is the clearing of a channel that could not carry both the scarcity command and the Arcturian origin frequency simultaneously. These two signals cannot coexist in an active field without one suppressing the other, And the protocol keepers are telling me that the one already losing coherence, already losing its grip on the foundational layer of your field, already fragmenting at the edges where the new frequency is pressing through, is the override. Not because you have worked hard enough or believed correctly enough or finally done the right thing. Because the correction itself is already in motion, initiated at the level where the override lives, by the intelligence that first identified it. If you can feel that even as a faint signal beneath the noise of everything still unresolved, if somewhere in you there is a quiet recognition that something has already changed even though the outer evidence has not yet caught up, you are not manufacturing hope to protect yourself from disappointment. You are reading your own field with a new accuracy that was not available to you before this transmission reached you. You were not abandoned. You were not cursed. You were not designed for lack. You were not sent here to live in perpetual emptiness as some form of spiritual testing or cosmic punishment. You were born into a lineage that survived by encoding a protection that is now generations older than the threats that created it. The protection ran faithfully. It did the thing it was built to do. And tonight, in this window, at this precise moment in the movement of your field, the protocol keepers have named it. And the naming is the beginning of its end. Say this aloud if it is true for you. What is draining from my hands is not mine to carry. It was encoded before I arrived, and I release what was never written for this version of my life. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this process has already touched your life. It could be your sleep, your thoughts, your body, your relationships, or the strange sense that reality no longer feels the same. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone whose money always seems to leave the moment it arrives. And if you are ready to understand the inherited code instead of fearing it, subscribe to Arcturian-Wealth-Council. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a process already in motion. And this is only the beginning.